Welcome to the Financial Freedom Mastermind Group podcast. Here we're all about breaking free from the 40 to 50-year work grind and accelerating our journey towards financial freedom. Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern as we explore different types of investments that can fast-track your path to financial independence. We serve as a hub for connecting with fellow members during our sessions so you can share successes, ask questions, and keep the momentum going.
My name is Niyi Adewale, host of the Akaba Home Financial Freedom Mastermind Group, and I'm excited to be joining you here on this Wednesday, June 19th. And tonight is going to be a bit of a special session. One of the reoccurring guests that we have on the podcast is actually going to be joining us tonight to talk about a new tool that he's been using to track the equity within his real estate. And this tool actually helps you to determine your return on equity, so that you can compare different real estate investments, not just on the cash that they're bringing, but also on how quickly it's appreciating and determine which ones make the most sense. So he's going to be joining here soon, and that is Justin Parham, but this is going to be an open session following that. And so after we walk through that piece, looking forward to hearing any feedback from the people that are joining live. And then as always, if you have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat and or to join live and kind of go from there. Justin, how you doing, man? Super good. Super good. Trying to make it happen on a Wednesday. Do you see a share screen button at the bottom? Perfect. And while you're pulling that up, thank you for doing this. Okay, let me put it. This needs screen sharing permission. I think your browser needs screen sharing permission. But while he's getting set up, this tool is one I'm still working to get fully set up, but I have about half my properties in there, and it's been amazing so far. Just being able to pop in and see very clearly. I'm a visual person. I'm not one that can go into a spreadsheet, type a whole bunch of stuff and really pull things from it. I like seeing pictures, graphs, things of that nature. And so this tool allows you to see that done and done. We've dealt with Lee Bonds. We can do it with yours. And to that point, Lee Bond is not going to be on tonight. He is handling some real estate related business. But when Justin comes back, we're going to knock this thing out.
Sorry about that. I actually just went over to using a new browser, so that's why some things weren't quite set up. Should be good to go now. Using Arc browser now. It's actually pretty amazing.
What's it called?
Arc browser.
It's not Google. It's not Microsoft. It's something different.
Yeah, it's something different. Yep. But it uses all those similar tools. Cool. So
okay.
You got me?
Yes, we see it.
All right, cool. So I went ahead and went past, the initial setup, but I got a portfolio here that I'm going to go through with the demo. I'm not going to bore you guys with the details of figuring out how to get to Property Llama. It's fairly simple once you get in there and get all signed up. So I'm just going to go straight into kind of inputting a property. So as you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? It kind of takes you through it. You put your address in and all of this information, I pulled it from Redfin. So, you just kind of pull up your address and get all your information here. And then you plug it into Property Llama, right? So then you scroll on down through here where you have your address. You put the property type and the number of bedrooms, bathrooms that you have in each unit. All that jazz. You can get through that pretty quickly. But here's where it gets important. So you want to make sure you get your purchase price in there, your date of purchase, because it's going to be tracking how many payments that you've made on this property, right? So you want to make sure you have all those things correct based on when you bought the property. I know a lot of people are going to be inputting properties that they already have. So you want to make sure that you look at your closing documents and make sure you have all that stuff right, because a lot of times your purchase price may be a little bit higher than your offer price. You have to factor in some different things. So you just want to make sure you have all your numbers squared the way you're tracking your portfolio properly. Once you punch in those things, it will go ahead and pull up the closing costs for you, but you can adjust those numbers just in case you got some closing credits or things of that nature, and you need to pull those numbers down. For this one, we're going to be going full purchase price, and then we're going to kind of just cheat the values because we're going to do this as if we're purchasing the property today. We're going to do zero down and not going to have any improvements because this property is pretty much turnkey.
Just so really quick, while we're on that section, I just want to highlight one of the things that he mentioned, right? So super important that you get these details right. And where you would find that, just as Justin mentioned, is your closing disclosure, also known as a settlement statement. It's that one document that they give you that everybody signs at closing, and you sign about 5 of these. And that's the one that you give for even utility companies. It'll have all these numbers on there for you. It'll have the exact amount that you paid for your total closing costs. It'll have the date that you actually closed. So for those who are not actively tracking, their portfolio documents, I highly recommend starting now with any property you buy moving forward to keep a folder somewhere on your desktop or, in your files and digitally just attach those items to that property. I've been doing it since day one. It helps tremendously because at some point, somebody's going to ask you for these details, i.e. Property Llama, and you're going to want to be able to find it.
Yep. Great tips right there, Nate. Great tips. So after you get all that worked up, you're going to go to your banking or whoever you pay your mortgage through, right? Mostly it's going to be whoever your service to it in your loan. You want to go there. You want to grab what your current loan balance is. You want to put that in. And then you're going to also have to put in that original loan amount. So like Lee said, that number's got to come up again. Then you want to put in the interest rate in which you have on your loan. This can vary depending on when you got your mortgage. If you got it a couple of years ago, you're probably hovering right around 3 to 4%. If you're recently buying this year, you're going to be somewhere around 6%. These are numbers that I said, once again, I pulled from Redfin because we're doing a demo with this property, right? You got to put your loan term here. And then you got to put, if you're paying any money extra towards that principal a month, you want to put that here. And then if you have any lender credits, you want to put that here as well. Then it's going to calculate what your monthly payment is. It should be pretty close. It may be off, give or take $1 or $2, just depending on how they do some things in Property Llama. Then you want to scroll down a little bit. And here, if you're operating a short-term rental, which most of us in this group are, you want to just kind of take what you generally will make a month, or you can use your AirDNA where it tells you how much you'll make a year and just divide that by 12. These things can fluctuate a little bit on our end if we're doing short-term rentals, but if you have a long-term rental, it's going to be pretty consistent. So you just put in that data there based on what you got from a long-term rental. For this property via AirDNA, I was told that each unit should get about $5,000 a month after all the other expenses. So that's the number you want to put here. You want to put the after expenses number right here. So that's after cleaning fees and everything, after utilities as well, because you're going to be another section for that. So once you put all that in, it'll calculate your total monthly income here. So you'll have that. And then you'll just save all of these things, and it's going to pull you forward to another set of screen.
And Justin, while you're doing this and kind of working through this piece, what's the cost to this Property Llama? Is there a fee for adding in these different properties?
So Property Llama is 100% free. I haven't had any issues of having to pay anything for the service anymore. I actually go to their splash page real quick, and it says it right here, baby, 100% free. And in this investor space, any tools that can help you out and kind of get you closer to those financial goals and achieving financial freedom, we're all game for them. It costs you nothing to try this system out. So if you try it for a month or two and you don't really like it, no money that hit the bottom line on that.
Yeah. And what I love about it is the fact that, and we're not sponsored by this, by the way. So if anybody knows anybody at Property Llama, go ahead and, send them our way so we can get that sponsorship. But long story short, what I like about this is it's hard at times, at least in a fast format, to know, okay, which properties are performing, which ones are doing better, which ones work more to my net worth, things of that nature, without going through a whole bunch of work. This is one where you could put it in up front, literally do this the day you close or the day after, and continue with that process. And over time, it's just going to give you a robust look at your real estate portfolio to understand the winners, the ones that are lagging behind. And if you had to sell one, or you're like, hey, I want to get rid of one this year, which one to target and which will give you the most value.
I'm actually having to input a couple of things in here again. So I'm sure you guys see that I'm just flipping over to Redfin to get that insurance and the monthly taxes that they estimate for you. I'm going to change property management to 0. I self-manage, so I'm able to change that and kind of save those costs.
One piece on that vacancy piece, and this is one that can be a little bit different. AirDNA actually factors in vacancy for you, so you don't want to double count that piece. But if you're doing a long-term rental, you do need to add in X% for vacancy, because that is an expense that you got to prepare for.
All right, cool. So we got all that stuff edited for this property. Now we can go back, and now we get a full snapshot of how everything really looks. So now we're getting into the fun stuff, right? We kind of went through the monotony of getting those properties plugged in, but I wanted to show you guys that it doesn't take a lot of time, because I know a lot of time when people see new tools, they're like, oh man, I don't have time to kind of put all my properties in. That's going to take me forever. But you see those high level details that they need, and they're able to calculate all those things on the back end versus you trying to figure it out in a spreadsheet, right? So right here, it shows you right now that the current value of this property is 2.5 million, monthly rents is 20,000, and your equity in the home is about $125,000. All these things were calculated on the information that we put in previously. And as you can see here, it says your annual cash flow in this property will be negative $14,848, right? So for a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, this is a deal that you shouldn't get into because you're going to be negative cash flow on this deal. This is one of those higher properties. The vacancies and the things of that nature, your property tax, all this stuff, it kind of highlights it right here to get us to this number of where we're going to be negative right here. So it's showing us where we'll look at per month on the cash flow. So this is a negative property, right? So you can go ahead, you can see at a high level how this property is going to be negative and why it would be negative. And what could you do in order to get this property to be cash flowing, right? So that would be a case to where you probably have to put a couple dollars down, or you'd have to get that interest rate down in order to get this to a cash flow. But as you come on down here, you can start to see your cash on cash return. So this was a $0 down deal. So in 5 years, they're projecting that things will start to get better in this property, right? Your loan to value, your projected value will go up. So you gain about $200,000 in equity here around the year 5 mark. You'll have all in all $500,000 worth of equity in this deal. And this is all calculated based on data that Property Llama is pulling into their system. So you don't have to do any of this, right? But the key metric that I really like from this program is the return on equity piece, right? So it starts to tell you how your money is working for you, right? A lot of times when we get into these real estate deals, if you've been into the deal for a couple of years, you can find that you have trapped equity in the home. And basically what that means is you got, say, $200,000 in the home that you could pull out and you can deploy that capital somewhere else. So, right, this helps you keep a good track of like, hey, is this time for me to take maybe a HELOC on this home, or could I cash out refinance and deploy some of that capital that I've built up in the home through appreciation into another deal so I can increase my cash flow? I could potentially get to that financial freedom a little bit quicker.
And to that point, and I love what you just mentioned, being able to know even what strategy would make the most sense based on the equity they have in the property and the cash flow, right? What were you doing before this, right? Because you more than likely sought this thing out and said, okay, I need something to calculate this. But were you doing anything before this when you came across Property Llama?
So I was just kind of doing it manually, right? I take out pen and paper, I look at my metrics, and I see like, okay, how much did I make this month? You know, tracking the expenses and doing all that math manually. And it became very cumbersome, right? It was a lot of the same numbers that I was running over and over again, month in and month out, just trying to see kind of where I netted out. And I realized like, man, I wish I could just maybe build a spreadsheet that could do all this stuff for me. But then once I started looking into spreadsheets, I kept breaking them, because if you don't put in the right data into one of the columns, you can break the final number that you're supposed to be getting. I like this because there's no spreadsheets. Once I enter all that data, it pretty much stays the same. But if you need to go back and you need to make some adjustments, you can do that. I'm actually going to flip over to another portfolio. That way we can get a better picture of how things really work, because the example I used, it ended up being not a cash flowing property. That one made it a little difficult to see.
Please. And to that point, while you're flipping, this reminds me of like the bigger pockets calculators. So the reason I like those is because it's clean. It's easy to, even if you're not an investor, understand it. You can see like the graphs. You can see, okay, here goes the cash flow highlighted. Here goes exactly what the expenses are. And it makes it easy to relate to others. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do in anything. The hardest thing to do, I think Einstein might have said this, but is to make something simple, right? Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And so when you're able to take an abstract concept and make it as simple as this to where I can see it and know exactly what's going on, I'm always a fan.
Yep. Here's another example. This is another property, right? It gives us the current value at 425. Like I said, this is based on market rates and some data that Property Llama is pulling in based on homes that are being bought and sold in the area. You also can manipulate this if you want to use something like HomeBot or Zillow to kind of figure out where your property value currently is. And for here, very similar, you just calculate the monthly rents that you're getting on this property. And then you have all the expenses that you have that you can see right here, your utilities, your other expenses, your maintenance, and all those things of that nature. But you can see right here, our net operating income on this property is $2,116 minus that loan payment gets us to a cash flow of $374 a month. So we can see very quickly how that capital is working and how that money that we put into this deal is currently being used. And that's calculated with our return on equity piece, right? So the reason why this is grayed out, it'll tell you here, cash flow from this property is based on the original cash invested. This is your cash on cash return. Because I'm a VA investor, I will zero down into this property. So it doesn't calculate your cash on cash return. So what's important for me is the return on equity, right? How much am I leveraging the debt that I have into this deal in order to get me to financial freedom, right? So I'm at 63.74% on that return on equity piece.
That is awesome. And technically, as a veteran with the 0% down, your return is infinity, which is awesome.
Exactly. Infinity.
That is awesome.
If we can make the monthly payment, we have no issues on it, right? Mm-hmm. And next, you can see here, it talks about your acquisition. This is where all those numbers that we punched in earlier, how much cash did you have to put down, what was your closing costs, and all those things of that nature. That's where the acquisition piece comes in. That's why that number that we typed, those numbers that we typed in earlier are very important. And this shows that our date of purchase was November 2021 for this property that I have. Right. And as you go through it, it'll quickly show you how all of these metrics change year in and year out. And they kind of estimate the way rents will go up based on the longevity of holding this rental property. So it'll be a little bit different for me because I operate this property as an SCR, but just having those ballpark numbers does really well as well. As you can see, that projected cash flow changes as we get throughout the years. But the main reason why that projected cash flow is going up is because we're dealing with debt pay down. As you can see, all of that stuff happening right there. So that also increases our cash flow.
No, Justin, I think this is awesome. It's definitely a tool that I was excited about when I learned about it. I think it was about 2 weeks ago now. And so I've been steadily working through trying to add that piece. And I, for one, appreciate you coming on to share this with the group. I know we teased it a little bit last week, and we probably got a couple of people that are already on this now. But this is an exciting tool, and that's part of the reason that we do these, right? So that we can all share different things that are helping us optimize our investments and even keep track of it. And so, no, truly appreciate you jumping on for this, man.
No problem, man. Hopefully it made sense. I know it's, not a lot of time. It's something that we tried to get through very quickly there, but hopefully it made a lot of sense. And like I said, it's a fairly simple tool to use. So once you get into it and you start playing around with it, I think people can get a pretty good understanding of it very quickly.
Any questions, comments from the chat or those joining us about the Property Llama for Justin? And Justin, while we're waiting for that, you cursed my Mavericks, man. You said you didn't want to go to a game 7 or a game 6, and they got mollywopped in game 5. Wasn't even close.
You weren't rooting for Boston after your former ties there? I figured you'd be rooting for Boston.
Now, I'm loyal to the teams that I know, right? And so I never really had anything with Boston. Even when I was up there, they were playing like football and stuff. I was rooting for Philly, so not so much.
Got you. Do we have anything in the chat? No questions.
Yeah, just popped up.
Like I said, they're already joining Property Llama as we speak. Nothing else not here. Yep, that's it.
Nice. Okay. Well, outside of that, Justin, how's everything coming your way, man?
Man, everything is going good. Just trying to find more tools and things of that nature in order to just continue to increase the productivity and the cash flow, man. Trying to figure out how can we be more efficient in our business and not spend a lot of time during the day-to-day, right? So I'm looking at a lot of stuff, reading a lot of books, Atomic Habits, things of that nature, just trying to make sure that we're putting the right tools and the right practices in place, that where we're saving that time on the back end. It's going to be a grind up front, getting all this stuff in order, but I know it'll pay dividends as we move forward down the road.
And to that point, I like the Atomic Habits book, and that's something that I'm constantly thinking about as well, is how do you create like SOPs, right? To where it can take it off your plate eventually. And so are you starting to do that? And if yes, are you using any tools to create those SOPs?
Yeah, I'm starting to do that. My main tool that I'm using, man, I think we talk about all the time, ChatGPT. It's just using it as a sounding board. Whenever I have a question, whenever I have a thought, whenever I have an idea, I'm always constantly throwing into that. And then I'm building out the SOPs in Notion so that way I can organize everything very good. And then once I get it built out in Notion, I'm moving it over to documents that I can share with my team, whether that be in Google Docs or things of that nature. It's just something that most people are utilizing and that they can understand at a high level, and where I can disseminate that information. And I'm trying to do as much as that upfront before we grow and scale, because the more I can get done here, the better efficient we can be down the road. And as I start to bring on people with more knowledge and more basis on leadership and understanding SOPs, they can refine and they can tweak the things that are already in place versus starting from scratch.
100% agree. And to that point, you mentioned something, doing it right now while you're still in the early building phase. Desmond, you kind of skipped over some of the early stuff. You're like, you got a heck of a lot of units to deal with right now. How are you doing on the SOPs? And is that something that you think about?
It is something I think about, and it's something I'm starting to think about more and more this year, as I do want to, I've been saying this in some of the previous podcasts, like button things up and start to think more about like, who is the team going to be? What is the team? What does the team need to be? So yeah, it's definitely something I have all in my head right now. Nothing is really down on paper other than like some of the kind of SOPs I hold myself to, but I haven't really started yet to put it down in terms of like, where's the ship going to go? Do we need the SOPs? Where do we need people to start filling in the gaps? But it's definitely something I'm taking on toward the end of the year. And right now I have my focus mostly on taxes. And I know I'm a little late to that discussion and to that vote, but it's okay. Better late than never, I like to say. So I'm going to, look to get that done in the next week or so, and then start to, I think, for just the end of the year, really focus on before things do get to move too fast and before I do start to think about the next property, because it's coming. I'll be in your inbox at some point for sure. But it's the point of like having things in at least some sort of stable place, because to the second unit or second property, I definitely like for those first few months after the purchase, I'm like, man, like I'm kind of tired. Like this is just kind of a lot of work. But now that things, I think especially with the short-term rentals, are in more of a stable place and it's kind of more flowing without me in it every single day, it's thinking about the SOPs and it's seeing all of the back-end pieces that aren't just the day-to-day and cast on something about it.
And Desmond, I'm happy that you're starting to think about it, because that's the key, especially for the goals that you're trying to get to, which is continue to grow. I can tell you that I was in a similar spot. I didn't have short-term rentals back then. It was all long-term rentals. And then I moved away. I was up in Boston trying to manage about 15 units, and that was my max. It actually got to a point where I didn't want to buy anymore. I saw a deal and I'm like, listen, I'm not putting an offer out there because I know I'm going to have to go figure out those new tenants, evict some people and all that stuff. And so the sooner you can start doing that, like I'm happy that you're doing it now, the better. And to Justin's point, I use a combination of Google Drive, like the Word on Google Drive, and Loom. Are you guys familiar with like the Loom screen recording? Yeah. That thing is incredible. Like I use it a heck of a lot. So like if you're doing something constantly, like what I always ask and I try to write down is like, okay, what am I doing today that could be elevated and delegated? And actually, I set aside an hour every Monday where it's just elevate and delegate. And so I'm trying to figure out what 1 or 2 items can I create a video for and push it off. For example, we have the property management company. One of the things that was taking up a heck of a lot of time as we grew was actually just sending invoices. It's like, hey, we ordered all this stuff, for this property, that property. Okay, I need to send invoices to people with the receipts. And it may not seem like much, but if you're sending it for 20 properties, all of a sudden it's like an hour and a half later, I'm still working on this. And I'm not getting anything done or moving the ball forward. And so I created just a Loom video. I just did it on a computer. Like, hey, how do I do this? I taught my VA, and now I haven't sent an invoice in the last year. Right? It just comes from him. And then taught like operations manager, hey, this is how we order stuff, and this is how we should send the receipts to the VA to send the invoice. I'm completely out of it. So it's like just little by little, what are certain things I'm doing right now? And you can do that even with a short-term rental guest experience management. But you got to start sooner rather than later to be able to make that piece happen.
What I like
Joining for the first time. Go ahead, what's that side?
that me is if it doesn't generate cash, you must complete the pass. Like you must pass it on to somebody else if it doesn't generate that cash flow, or if it's not bringing in more dollars, right? 'Cause you don't want to spend time like those things have already been purchased. Those people you're already dealing with, like you said, pass that on to a VA. That's low hanging fruit. You want to get that stuff off your desk.
And joining for the first time, Nas, welcome, man.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Property Llama is amazing. While you were doing the tutorial, I was already inputting my data. I done got properties pulled up as we speak. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna. I think it's a game changer, man. Just being able to see all that stuff at the forefront without having to deal with 8 to 10 spreadsheets and all things all over the place. And you can create separate portfolios. You know, for me, he's managing a lot of stuff for clients, so now he'll be able to send that information out to his clients very quickly because you can generate reports inside of Property Llama and everything. And Desmond, to your point earlier, before I forget, I'm the master of many tools, but I fucked that up. Anyway, I'm a man of many tools, but master of none. But there's another tool that I like to use called Monarch that can really help you with that taxes piece, right? So Monarch is very similar to like all these budgeting apps, but what's really cool about this one is you can look at your personal finances and your other finances, right? But you can separate your business finances from your personal finances, but you can see everything in one snapshot. So you can see your net worth as it grows or if it decreases with all your stocks and everything, right? So what Monarch does is you tag things accordingly. So if you tag things as business expenses, it puts them into a separate bucket. But it's not like QuickBooks where it's very like archaic. This is a new, clean user interface. So once it uses AI to kind of calculate all these things. So once you tag it one time, it kind of sets it on autopilot and everything comes in. So for me, I have my property in Decatur and I have my property in Atlanta. So when I get a cleaning for that one, it goes to the Burbank cleaning so I can see how much have I paid in cleaning so far this year. Boom, I can click the Burbank cleaning. It has like a little sponge and it shows me the list of all the transactions made for the Burbank cleaning because it correlates to my bank accounts. So once you have those separate bank accounts, it makes it very easy in order to tag and categorize those things inside of Monarch. Then it shows you at a high level everything you need to know from a tax standpoint. So you can just pass off your cash flow statement to your CPA so they can see how many expenses you had for your properties for the year. If you're dealing with me like a house hack, if you got to divide some of those things in half, they can easily calculate those things, or they can just kind of take whatever you send them and now they can do all that work without having to go through all of those transactions. And if the IRS, wants to see anything, you can just pull up those reports. You can send them off very easily.
Yeah, so I will say plus one on Monarch. I started to onboard to it just from personal expenses. She didn't know that they had the split for business as well, so it's a great call out. And I know Monarch kind of is, it seems like the next big Mint. And I know a lot of people use Mint. I use Mint. So yeah, I definitely will take you up on that. And I'm going to try to plug that in as well. I use QuickBooks also, so I kind of had in my mind that like that was going to be the business side, and I had Monarch kind of for the personal side. But I totally agree with your archaic point for QuickBooks. I hate honestly going in there and like having to do stuff because it's like difficult. There's some ramp up involved for sure, just learning QuickBooks, specifically QuickBooks Online. So yeah, I'm definitely going to take you up on that, and I would recommend Monarch as well to any folks because it is really good and it's really modern and it's really easy and friendly to use compared to something like Stessa or QuickBooks or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think the thing I like about Monarch is, like you said, it's modern, it's easy to use, but also the price point, man. It's like the reoccurring, I think it's $40 a month for QuickBooks. Monarch, it's a one-time fee per year, and they have 50% off right now if you type in the code MINT50. So you're getting that for $49, right? So that's a capital expense that you can pretty much wipe off the table. So that's really what got me into it. And I jumped in it, and after like 30 minutes seeing how quickly all my information was onboarded and how clean it was, I was all game because I've used things in the past like Rocket Money and other services, but I feel like Monarch is just a step above all the other ones that I've used in the past.
Question for you on that. Are you able to send invoices from Monarch, and then can you have CPAs and bookkeepers while doing Monarch?
Yeah, so you can do a screen only share to other entities. They have it for financial advisors, but you can share it with whoever needs to see it. Invoices, I'll have to take another look. I haven't looked into sending invoices out from that, but I'll let you know. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, because I'm all about all the systems. My main thing now, and you know this, it's, well, you got a ship, you've got a lot of people on that ship, and trying to turn that boat into harder and harder. And so with QuickBooks, I don't really look at it, so I don't feel the pain anymore. But I do remember the pain of trying to like sort stuff, like how the heck do I do this? And you can mess it up very quickly. You can really mess it up. So I'm not the one to do it. But I do like the fact that when you send invoices, you can keep track of that piece. And so I want to understand that. But I've never heard of Monarch before this. Nas, have you heard of that?
No, I haven't. That's the first time. And honestly, as he was saying all that stuff, I was like, man, I can actually get rid of my QuickBooks.
And guys, to that point, typically when someone joins, Nas, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. We usually ask some of their goals, right? And what they have from the investing past. But before you answer that, just want to give everybody a heads up that we're going to be diving into Nas's story at a later Wednesday call. We're just working to get it set up scheduling wise because it's super interesting. But Nas, I'll let you take it away from an investment standpoint. What are you looking to achieve? What have you done?
Wow. 2 flips over the years, and 2 investment properties, both multifamilies. Hoping to scale here soon. Probably going to be taking on 2 properties this year. So that's a good thing. And now that I got Property Llama, this is about to be amazing, man. Because it's one thing to keep your projections in your head, right? Like I know where I want my returns to be at, but it's another thing to see it on a sheet of paper. And just flipping through where I think I'm going to be at in 10 years and 20 years. This is amazing. This is game changing.
Come on now. Nothing wrong with that. Welcome to the call. It's good to see you, man. And Desmond, what else you got going on?
Man, right now, honestly, aside from the tax piece and just like buttoning up like what I have, honestly, man, I've been thinking a lot about this new co-hosting Airbnb, opportunity, whatever it is. I like Airbnb a lot, just in the sense that they were able to come and create like a whole new market, right? They made a whole brand new thing that we weren't even doing, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I feel like that might be what they're starting to kind of do with the co-hosting as well. Where like, yeah, you can go on like Upwork and Fiverr or whatever and like find you a VA. Like, I want to use Mayor for some location. There's no like central place. It's the co-host marketplace, right? So I kind of feel like in just hearing what you've been talking about me and like just seeing that they're very hungry, like getting people onto the site. I've been thinking a lot about that and just how I could benefit from that and maybe what that could be. Maybe taking the booking.com digital management, thing that I have going on now, taking that a little farther. And I'm putting a lot of thought into that of like, what would it take just to like start a small scale company and like hire a few VAs? Like, so I have a buddy who is really into entrepreneurship and he seems to have a new LLC or idea or whatever it is every like 6 months. And he, in a way, makes it look easy. Where like he'll have a new business and like customers start down, right? And I think it's a lot easier said than done. And so exposure and marketing, there's a lot that comes with starting a company. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what really could the risk be? Like I don't need to like eat off of this money. But like if it were able to, we got 15 or 20 clients. 5 clients, ever X amount of time, and then being able to scale from there. I'm thinking about that, right? Because I've continued to want something other than just like each year. That's kind of the cadence I'm comfortable with now. And even like with the year, like we're in the middle of the year, it's kind of hard for me to see myself like buying a house like at the end of the year or like at the beginning of the next one. But I know it's going to come, and I know I'm going to be like, oh man, like. Been here for a while, like, let's just see what happens, right? So, yeah, I've been putting a lot of thought into that and just, what would it take to start some sort of small brand and, like, grow it slowly or let it grow as quickly as possible. That's kind of where I'm at.
Dude, I love it. And I'd love to hear Nas's thoughts and then also Justin's on this. But when you look at what you just said, like you are proven. You have multiple B&Bs. You've done the booking.com. I didn't want to get on the booking.com until, I heard about all your success. And then you showed me the calendar and I'm like, all right, man, let's figure this thing out. Let's buckle down and figure it out. And so you have the proven track record. And I look at it as an adjacency to what you're already doing. Like what I love is being able to focus on something, get really good at it, and then start to look at adjacencies that kind of come off of that piece. So for example, realtor, what do people need? They also need property management. Now we may not manage long-term rentals, but we have partners that we can send to, and we manage short-term and mid-term rentals. Okay, that's one piece. Now, what else could you do from an adjacency standpoint? I've thought about cleaning companies, but I'm just like, hey, I don't have the bandwidth for that piece. But also, what about like mortgage relationships, right? So what if you build that piece out? That's something that, I'm talking to people in the background to figure that piece out. So long story short, I like the adjacencies, and there's nothing wrong with trying to just start small and build from there, right? You don't need to go sink, thousands of dollars into something anymore. You can just start with a minimally viable product and add on to it. It doesn't need to look like your friends where it's all buttoned up. They got a website and all this stuff day one. It could be as simple as, hey, book a consulting on Linktree. You have a Linktree and a Calendly, and it's like, hey, book a consulting for booking.com and I can get you set up, because I would have booked it. I did book it. I didn't have anywhere to click. I just hit you up like, hey, man, I need some help. So kind of went from there. But
Yeah, absolutely. And plus one, just one real quick, plus one on an adjacency piece. I really like just thinking, what are the next natural step? Don't force it. What's the next natural progression? It's a lot easier to go into that when you have that background knowledge. Like, I'm already kind of doing this in a way. So like, let's just step into doing it a little bit more. Yeah, no, so we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I'm gonna take it a step back. What it sounded like you were talking about was something that I messed up when I first started investing in real estate, which is the ability to scale and think about my investment strategies as a business and not additional income. I made that mistake early on, but I mean, again, I started investing when I was, young. I got my first property at 27. So depending on how you look at it, some people can say, "Oh, you're older." I was young-minded. So at 27, get my first property, and I seen this extra cash flow coming in. I was like, all right, time to get this BMW, get this motorcycle. I went and had some fun. And then, about 2 years into it, I was like, man, if I would have taken that same money and start applying it for scaling, I would be at about 5 or 6 properties by now. Not to say that I'm not doing decent, but I'm always looking at the next deal. So that's
self-plug. We'll say self-plug. Turned 27 2 days ago. So right now on vacation, headed to Jamaica. Just
nice.
So I just want to self-plug that.
Listen, and the soft brag too. I mean, listen, I've been seeing the stories. I was like, damn, he ain't never here anymore, man. He's just
Not here.
He's in Hawaii. He's out here.
It's actually cheaper to travel than to live in America. Like he probably can travel year round and do it cheaper than living in America.
Yes, he could. Some people are.
I made my place a B&B 1,000%, and don't think I hadn't thought about that for sure.
It's either to Loom full time now, man. Hey, I don't mind it. Just save the spot for us, all right? Save the spot for the Chicago Financial Freedom. Don't forget about your boys.
Hey, Desmond, to your point earlier about Desmond, to your point earlier about growing businesses, right? I kind of look at it as if, like, kind of what Nee said, like, what are those adjacencies and like, what can I offset that I'm already pretty much managing, right? I look at things within my Airbnbs, like cleaning, like you said, that's one of those things that I feel like if I had to manage that, I could easily manage it, right? So if I wanted to start a new business, what are some things that are very high cost line items on my docket that I'm trying to get rid of? So I can create those line items into revenue, right? Maybe I can't eat all of the costs that are associated with that, but I could take that off my plate. And to your other point that we were talking about, like traveling, what can you do to minimize expenses within your business that you already have, right? So instead of thinking about creating another business, like you said, finding people that you can pay a wage that's fair, that can kind of get you some of that time back so you can start deploying some of that capital into more properties and just scaling the business that you're already in, right? Because no matter how many businesses you can start, if you can get 100 rental properties, but you're not dealing with 100 rental properties, that's just as good as having 10 other businesses out there. So it's push and shoves, right? I think it all comes down to the amount of capital you have, and sometimes starting those other businesses can help you get that capital up quickly.
And I think what you said is something that I've been thinking about all year, right? It's like you go to another business, you buy another property, do you go do the next thing? Or do you focus on your current thing and focus on maximizing and making that as efficient, as absolutely possible, right? And I think it's a balance, right? As are most things in life. And it's one that I'm definitely still trying to perfect and get right, of like, how much do I focus on buttoning up and like optimizing every single penny, for the short-term rentals, for the long-term rentals that I have, for how much thought and weight do I put into starting a new cleaning company, whatever, laundry company, whatever it might be, right? And I think also too, found it tough to like value, I guess, my time, right? So like, yeah, I can pay people to get my time, but it can be tough for me to understand, is that worth it or not? Sure, I can understand how much I make in my W-2. And like, that's a really easy way to understand, like, at least one opinion on the value of my time. So like, for instance, with spraying the weeds, you guys were joking like last week or two, like, oh, you get a lot of that. Like, what are you doing out here spraying the weeds? But like, there are some things I want to have oversight over. I want to ensure, like, hey, we're doing it this way. And that's another thing with scale, giving up that control. And like, I think it comes with having these, at least some basis of an SOP and some basis of like, this is how we do things. And if you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong. And if you do it wrong too many times, that probably won't be in your best interest. So I think those are all things I'm trying to think about and understand, like, what is the next step. And I also kind of go back to this broken saying of like, porque no los dos, right? Like, why can't I do both, right? So like, why can't I, make my current properties efficient, like, after work during the week, and then look for like new properties on the weekend, or like, start this co-hosting company on the weekend. So I think that's another thing I'm trying to think about too, is like not stretching myself too thin and like, oh, this one has like 10 businesses. No way. Can I see something like, I have like 6 businesses? Like, it's impossible. You can be doing all the well, or it's not necessarily impossible, but like, you have to really have like your ducks in a row, right? You have to have some sort of team around you and some sort of SOPs. And right now I have none of that. So I'm trying to build that up.
I think it can come down to opportunity cost too. It's like, you can't rob Peter to pay Paul. It's like you said, it's like scaling and thinking about all these things. It's like your time and trying to figure out how much you can value your time is like, it all costs something at the end of the day. And like you said, it can be very monotonous trying to figure out what it costs.
Hey, we might need a bell or something to go along with that. When you said opportunity costs, I was like, man, you just stole the words directly out of my mouth. And to Desmond's point, as you scale, there's a lot of risk associated with scaling, getting the capital to do so, building the team. And then as you scale, like you said, giving up the reins on some stuff. And, the hardest thing, at least, and granted, this wasn't even for my personal business. This was for the military, but giving up some of your, control, to delegate, it's not an easy thing, because you got to trust that person that they're going to execute somewhat, close to how you would execute. And that's not always the case. Generally, I like to, whether I'm working for somebody or working with somebody or they're working for me, I try and plug into the mindset. Do you see things generally the same way that I do? And if that's the case, then I can probably build with you. If not, we got some learning to do, or we just going to cut ways.
It's not one. Yeah, good call out for sure.
And we are coming up on time, but I had to piggyback off of this one because this is huge. And I would just say, when you're looking to scale, like, this is the piece that's both the hardest and the most rewarding, right? You have to be able to delegate. You have to trust others to be able to be awesome, right? Even think about yourselves. You're excellent in what you do and what your craft is. And so you've got to trust somebody else to be excellent in that craft. And I think back to even like, for example, and this is a small example early on, but in the management company, we've gone through a couple cleaners and kind of moved that whole piece around. And some owners would reach out to us when there'd be one bad cleaning and be like, hey, well, we need you to go out there and check this property every time. I'm like, listen, I'm not doing that. Neither is my team, right? We're going to have metrics around this piece. And if somebody has a couple strikes within, a 90-day period, okay, we're going to move on from that person. And we're just going to have conversations because we want that person to be accountable for what they're accountable for. Anybody that works with me, they can attest to this. I'm pretty chill. It's more like, hey, I trust you to do your thing, you know? But if things start falling apart, we have a conversation. Things fall apart again, we have another conversation. And then it's, hey, we may have to part ways, right? Especially if it's happened like all together. But we've got to be able to have that trust piece. Definitely didn't have that early on. But I learned quickly, hey, I'm going to burn out if I don't. And then you'll be surprised by some things, right? Like, we'll talk about it at a later date here, probably in an interview coming in the future, foreshadow. But like, there's people that are doing things way better and thinking about things way more than I would. And I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even think that was a way that we could do this. And so, yeah, it's truly rewarding to be able to give up the reins on certain pursuits and focus on what we're good at.
Thing that leads us with mindset and trust.
Come on now. Everybody has an awesome Wednesday. Thank you for joining, and I will catch you guys next week.
I petition to make this 2 hours. There you go.
Hey, Desmond's got to get to the beach, man.
Quickly.
All right,
folks.
Join us every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern as we explore different types of investments that can fast track your path to